What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a video about Hades 2, the sequel, of course, to critically acclaimed Hades. This one releasing into early access just a few days ago on, I believe it was the 6th, so I thought it would be fun to take a look at it. That said, this game is still a bit early due to its early access nature, and I think it does have a little ways to go in terms of developing to a point where it's really on par with its original title. Nonetheless, though, I do think it's doing some fun things, so let's dive into it. Now, in the original Hades, we played as Zagreus, the son of Hades, and this time around we are playing Melino, the daughter of Hades, following the events of the first game with the family of the underworld properly reunited. A new goddess is born, that being Melino, of course. However, seemingly right after she was born, something of nefarious origin befell the underworld, with Kronos somehow dispatching the family. Thus, Melino has grown up not really knowing her family at all, and now that she is grown, is tasked with taking down Kronos and restoring Hades to the rightful position as ruler of the underworld, and maybe getting to know her family along the way. This, of course, involves dealing with a cast of gods, those from Olympus, and the ones still remaining, trying to make sense of what's left of the underworld, which includes our mentor Hecate. Now, outside of simply playing a different character, this does come with a host of gameplay changes, as Melino is a witch, first and foremost, and thus she has a lot of casting abilities, a magic pool, Omega abilities as they're called sometimes, which can help you do things like crowd control, or special charge-up abilities that can have unique effects. And you're almost certainly going to need those abilities, as in my experience thus far, the boons for this game are much more rare. So as you take on a run in this particular title, you can still find the boons from various gods that you could in the first game that augment specific actions of our character, that being your basic attack, your special attack, your hexes, your Omega abilities, your casts, the new sprint even, and layering these together formed the bulk of your build for that particular run. Well, in this game, these seem to be pretty rare, at least by comparison. I didn't feel like I was running into very many of them, and the ones I did run into seemed a bit less impactful overall, with only one of my runs so far feeling majorly impacted by them, so that's certainly a little bit different. And I believe the focus here is intended to shift towards more specific focus on individual actions that you're performing, such as crowd controlling with your big ensnare versus a charge up, which consumes a magic resource that you now have to manage. And overall, I think that just needs a little bit more tweaking myself, especially since thus far I'm having a hard time finding any of Melino's weapons particularly enjoyable, as none of the movement sets have quite spoken to me yet, as opposed to enjoying several of them in the original title. Now, beyond that stuff, realistically, if you've played Hades, this game will feel very, very familiar to you, as you might expect. Now, in between individual runs through the underworld and beyond, you'll be dumped back into the hub area known as the Crossroads. This can be upgraded as we move through the game, of course, which can be done via the large cauldron next to Hecate, where we can make various upgrades to the place. This can include basic things like installing the list of fates that will eventually allow you to complete prophecies for rewards, a vendor that will help you trade the game's many resources for things you might actually need in that moment. You can set up a sort of garden where you can harvest individual resources like nightshade or the other plants that you might need for some of your cauldron brews, for instance. Just to name a couple of things, the relationship mechanic from the first game where you would gift individual characters nectar, which allows you to advance conversations, etc., has made a return, which also keeps its keepsake rewards, which can grant you passive modifiers for individual runs, is all here and returning. Now, as I'd mentioned, there's a ton of different resources in this particular game, which is where they introduce the tool mechanic as well. One of the ways to harvest some of those resources is to bring a tool along with you, but you can only have one of these normally. From what I understand, you can eventually have more via a sort of familiar system that comes later on, but at the beginning at least, you can have one tool which will allow you to do things like mine silver or obtain psyche from shades, and it can be a lot to manage, and with the one tool requirement, it feels like you're sort of being forced to go very slowly on that front. Now, beyond all of that stuff, though, there is the expected, more permanent progression that the game has, a big portion of which, outside of the weapon unlocks, which change, of course, your basic setup, is the tarot cards and your grasp. You'll be able to find ashes on your individual runs that allow you to purchase tarot cards, and these cards have all sorts of passive effects that of course just make our character better in some way, but each of them comes with a cost of grasp. These are how many cards you can effectively have equipped at once you've unlocked them, and you need a separate resource called Psyche to unlock more grasp to allow you to equip more. So not only do you need to unlock the cards, you also need to further your ability to equip those cards. So taken all together, my sort of first impressions of Hades 2 via its early access here is that it's definitely going to need to do some work in that early access period to refine this to the point of its original title. Because right now, while I am enjoying a fair bit of it, I would say that Hades 2 is more of a sidestep than an upgrade from the original. With combat feeling different, bosses that are thus far very hard to read visually, a ton of different resources that are a bit difficult to manage on top of all the things you got to keep track of in your base. The boons don't feel as impactful as the first game, which makes individual builds feel a little lackluster in comparison. And while I think the shift in focus in terms of combat and the approach to the various abilities you can be using, such as your Omega or cast abilities, could be interesting, I just think it needs a little more time in the oven. So I'm also not wild about the sprint mechanic and the seemingly related nerf to your overall ability to dodge, but at the same time, there's still some cool stuff going on as well. I'm interested to see what happened here story-wise. Engaging with a lot of the individual characters is as over-the-top and memorable as the first title as well, and some of the new abilities, like the charge up and sort of special moves specific to Melano, have the potential to make for an engaging gameplay loop. But that's pretty much all I've got for you guys right now. But I'm looking forward to seeing how this one grows and changes between now and when it actually launches into its 1.0 state. But that is pretty much going to do it for today. So I certainly hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it informative. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Let me know how you feel about this one down in the comments section below. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.